Welcome back to Murder in the Black. It is your host, Steph. I'm happy to be back with you guys today. I want to extend a big thank you to everyone who has interacted with our bonus episode that was presented last week. It's entitled Inside the Investigation of Alicia Rudd. There we were able to deviate from what we typically do here on Murder in the Black and talk to someone who is an expert in the missing field. That is Natalie of the Black and Missing Foundation, as well as speak to the victim's family, Alicia Rudd's stepfather. It encourages us to make sure that we're advocates and not just enjoying true crime as a form of entertainment, and that we, yes, us, can have an impact on cases. If you're not familiar with the case of Alicia Rudd, I highly encourage that you go check out our bonus episode, but then after, make sure you go to YouTube, type in Black and Missing Foundation, and enjoy the docuseries about Alicia Rudd. And I want to encourage you that there are other cases for you to enjoy and bring awareness to. Let's go ahead and get into our true crime case for today. Grab your coffee if it's the morning, your lemonade if it's the afternoon, but most certainly grab your wine if it's the evening. Either way, let's get into it. Now, if you've been with Murder in the Black for a while, then you know we did a segment called True Crime in Sports. I'll be honest, I wasn't always sure if I wanted to cover the Rae Carruth story, not because it wasn't tragic, not because it wasn't important, but because I wonder if it had been told too many times. Movies, documentaries, news specials, podcasts, true crime series, it felt like another case people thought they already knew everything about. But the more time I've spent here on Murder in the Black, the more I've learned something that applies to almost every story we tell. It's not enough that a story has been told. It matters how it's told, who tells it, why it's being told now, and most importantly, whether the victim's name is still being spoken. So today, we're not just revisiting a case, we are restoring a legacy that belongs to Cherica Adams, a 24-year-old woman who should still be here, a woman whose life was stolen, and yet, in her final moments, she saved her son, a woman who did not die in silence, but in courage, and whose story still forces us to confront not just violence, but control, betrayal, and the danger that comes when a woman says no. If you've already heard this story, I hope you hear something new. If this is your first time, I hope you never forget her name, Cherica Adams. Sherika was born on June 30th, 1975, in Kings Mountain, North Carolina, to her mother, Sandra. Sandra was just 17 years old, too young, people said, too unprepared. But Sandra had a plan, as well as her parents. They wanted Sandra to complete her education to give her and Sherika the best start that they could possibly have. She needed to finish school. So after receiving her high school diploma, she decided to move to Charlotte to attend the University of North Carolina. Her parents were committed to help raising Sherika as she attended college throughout the week, but Sandra would always come back home on the weekends to make sure she was involved in Sherika's life. And when Sandra graduated college, she moved Sherika to Charlotte so they could finally build the life she had worked so hard for. And I want you to know that Sherika's name has an interesting backstory. At first, Sandra wanted to name her Eureka. Yes, like the vacuum cleaner, but stopped herself because she didn't want her daughter associated with cleaning products. Instead, she blended the names of Cher, as in the singer, glamorous and iconic, and Eureka to create something unique, something bold, something beautiful. Sherika, a name made with intention. Sherika grew up kind, outgoing. She was strikingly beautiful, although some remarked she never really truly knew the beauty that encapsulated herself. She went to West Charlotte High School and later the University of North Carolina, majoring in communications. She worked in real estate, she modeled, she even appeared in House Party 3. She was in motion, different circles, different opportunities, different paths. A young Black woman creating her life on her own terms. And then she met someone whose name at the time carried its own kind of spotlight. Rae Carruth, first round draft pick for the Carolina Panthers, a promising wide receiver out of Colorado. He was fast, charismatic, and the Panthers were building around him as the future of the franchise. He signed a $3.7 million contract. The press loved him. Fans adored him. His rookie year, he scored 4 touchdowns in his first 6 games. He was expected to be a star. And he lived like one. Parties, attention, women, status. He wasn't looking for commitment. He wasn't looking for stability. But when he met Sherika at a pool party in 1998, the chemistry was instant. They dated casually, nothing exclusive, nothing defined. But when she wanted something more, she found out he didn't. And despite him not wanting something more, they dated the entire summer. She even introduced Rae to her dad. But just as quickly as it started, the relationship faded. While Ray's football career stalled after he broke his foot and missed most of the 1999 season, Sherika was moving forward. She left college and focused on real estate full time. She also began exotic dancing. Why? No one really knows for sure. What is clear is that at a party later that year, she ran into Rae again. They reconnected, spent the night together, and suddenly, the relationship that had fizzled restarted. And one of the first things Rae did was buy her a phone. And we have to know that back in the 90s, a cell phone wasn't as common as it is today. And it was one of the ways that you could always stay in constant communication with someone. So Rae bought her one, and they began seeing each other again. And in April of 1999, Sherika learned she was pregnant. Sherika was thrilled. She had always wanted to be a mother. She told friends and family that she pictured a family with Rae, stability, a home. She didn't just want a baby, she wanted a life that came along with loving one. But Rae did not share in her dream. You see, Rae had already had a child and was paying $3,000 a month in child support. Another child, another child meant more money, more money, more responsibility, more public attention. Instead of excitement, he responded with denial, anger, and eventually extreme pressure. He asked her to get an abortion, questioned if the baby was his, attended her first doctor's appointment not out of love, but suspicion, wanting confirmation. And when the ultrasound showed it was his child, his attitude only hardened. For a second, imagine what that would feel like for Sherika to finally receive the very thing she prayed for: motherhood, family, possibility, only for the person who helped create that life to reject it, to reject you, to reject the dream. Still, Sherika made her decision. She would have her baby with or without him. She learned she was having a boy, and though Rae became increasingly volatile and tensions flared, her family stepped in with love, as they had previously done for her mother, Sandra, when she was pregnant with Sherika. They were preparing for a new chapter. What no one knew was that Rae was preparing for something else entirely. He did not want to pay child support. He didn't want the responsibility, and he didn't want to be tied down forever. He wanted Sherika, as well as her baby, gone. Hey, MIB fam, it's Steph, and I've got some exciting news to share. We're growing our Murder in the Black community over on YouTube. And to celebrate, we're hosting a holiday giveaway. Now through November 31st, right? You can win one of 5 gift cards just for supporting us over on YouTube. So here's how to enter. Subscribe to Murder in the Black on YouTube. Leave a comment on any video. That's it. You'll automatically be entered to win. And don't wait. The sooner you enter, the better your chances. I'll be reminding y'all every week, but go ahead and make it count this holiday season by supporting the podcast you love and entering to win something fun for yourself. Again, subscribe, comment, enter. 5 gift cards, one simple way to say thank you for rocking with us. Tap the link in the show notes and join us on YouTube today. On November 15, 1999, Sherika was 30 weeks pregnant. Ray called her and asked to go out on a date to the movies. She hesitated but thought maybe they were turning a corner, a new leaf. Maybe they could at least be co-parents. They planned to see the bone collector at 9:45 p.m. and they had plans for her to meet at his house and they would ride to the movies together. When she arrived at Ray's home, she was frustrated and perturbed because there seemed to be a party happening at the same time they were supposed to be going to the movies. And she called her mother around 9:15 to vent, voice her irritation. Sandra told her, "If you're uncomfortable, just go home, Sherika." Sherika agreed, but Ray finally came outside while she was still on the phone with her mother, apologized, and convinced her to stay. They met another couple, another Panthers player and his girlfriend, and went on a double date to watch The Bone Collector. The night seemed normal. They laughed, they talked. Nothing seemed off. After the movie, Ray and Sherika planned to go back to Sherika's place, but not before she had to pick up her car. So they went back to Ray's home and drove separately back to Sherika's apartment, one that she shared with her cousin. On the way, Sherika called her cousin and told her that she would be arriving soon with Ray to make sure that the house was cleaned up. They were both heading towards Sherika's house with Ray leading the way. They were traveling down a single lane road when Ray's vehicle suddenly came to a stop, forcing Sherika to stop behind him. What she didn't know is that a gold Nissan Maximum had been trailing behind them the entire time. And when they stopped, the gold Nissan Maximum pulled alongside of Sherika, and 4 shots were fired into her car. Ray drove away, and the Maximum did the same. Sherika, still alive, pulled her car into a nearby neighborhood, bleeding, terrified, and fighting for her life and the life of her unborn son. She managed to call 911.
I'm 8 months pregnant. How'd this happen? I was following that big movie and Ray Carruth. My boy, where's he at? In the car, I'm running down to my foot and did this. And then where did he go? He threw up. I think he did it. I don't know what to think.
In case you didn't hear, she told the operator she had been shot, that she was pregnant, that Ray Carruth had stopped his car in front of hers, blocking her in, and he never came back. That call became the most important evidence she would ever leave behind. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital at 1:45 a.m. Doctors performed an emergency C-section. Baby Chancellor Lee Adams was born, weighing just 3 pounds. He had been without oxygen for over 10 minutes. The bullet wounds his mother suffered had cut off his lifeline. He survived, but with permanent brain damage. Sandra got the call that her daughter had been shot. She reached out to Ray, but there was no answer. Hours later, he showed up at the hospital with a group of people and another woman he was dating. Sandra was furious, but Ray wanted to see his baby in the NICU, and they allowed him to do so. They asked if he wanted to hold his child. He declined, but took pictures. Meanwhile, Sherika was conscious enough to communicate. A tube in her throat kept her from speaking, but she could write. When asked what happened, she wrote, "He was driving in front of me. He stopped. A car pulled beside me. He blocked me in, and he never came back." When Sandra asked if she believed Ray was involved, Sherika didn't write yes. She didn't write no. She wrote a question mark. That was enough. Sherika endured a lot of injuries. She had been shot in her small and large intestines, her stomach, and liver. There was damage to her spleen, and she had lost 6 liters of blood. However, doctors at this time were confident that she would survive. Investigators subpoenaed Ray's phone records. And one number stood out. And when they asked him to recall the outgoing calls he placed that night, as well as calls that came in, he went over them, all but one number. And they were able to trace that number back to a Michael Kennedy. Michael Kennedy told everything. He said that he had met Rae at a car wash and that they became quick friends. Michael Kennedy was a known drug dealer. And if you haven't picked up some attributes about Ray's personality, he wanted to be a bad boy or at least be associated with them. And so his relationship with Michael Kennedy made sense. Michael Kennedy revealed that on the day Sherika was shot, Rae called him and asked him if he knew where to get a car. Now, the terms that they used was a hoopty, an around the way car, or something that couldn't be easily traced back. And Michael said, I don't, but I have a Nissan Maximum you could use if you want to. Michael went to his home that night. It was there that Rae ran down a plan that he wanted to kill Sherika and that he already enlisted a hitman by the name of Van Brett Watkins to shoot Sherika. But the hitman didn't have a gun and he needed Michael Kennedy to drive the hitman as Van was going to sit in the back seat in order to shoot Sherika. Michael said, well, I know where to get a gun because that wasn't hard to find for a known drug dealer. The plan was in place. Investigators had really good evidence after speaking with Michael. They were able to figure out who was involved, who pulled the trigger, and Michael was the person who drove. So investigators needed to speak to Van Watkins. Once arrested, Van denied his involvement. They questioned him for 7 hours, and eventually he confessed. He gave them the full backstory. He claimed that he met Rae through one of his security gigs. Prior to the shooting in June, he said that Rae asked him to beat up Sherika so she would lose the baby. And Van's only response was, I don't beat people up, I kill them. During the summer, Rae gave Van $3,000 to kill Sherika. According to Van, there had been several attempts on Sherika's life prior to the incident of November. He claimed that he started to stalk her and he started to find out her habits and whereabouts, but he never found the right opportunity and hesitated because Sherika was pregnant. He claimed that Rae would call him several times throughout the summer leading up to the November incident, asking if he had done it, if he had finally murdered Sherika. Equipped with this plethora of information from the driver and the gunman, they had enough to arrest Rae. Rae Carruth was arrested, but he was allowed bail on the condition that if Sherika or Chancellor died, he would have to turn himself in. They now wanted to speak to Sherika, hoping that her condition allowed her to talk more. However, Sherika fell into a coma for 27 days. She never regained consciousness. Sandra made the hard decision to take her off life support, and on December 14th of 1999, Sherika passed away at 24 years old. They laid Chancellor on her chest before taking her last breaths. Her heart rate monitor fluttered as a last attempt to remain on Earth for her son. The nurses placed Sherika's hands around her son and as tears streamed down her face before she eventually passed away. Initially, Rae Carruth was charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Carruth disappeared after Sherika died from her injuries, and he never came back into the station, which was a condition of his bond. He disappeared, prompting the U.S. Marshals and the FBI to launch a multi-state search. His status was quickly elevated to fugitive, and alerts were issued nationwide. Law enforcement agencies briefed news outlets as they tracked tips from the public. Carruth was found hiding in the trunk of a car in Tennessee. The vehicle belonged to a woman he was dating at the time, Wendy Cole. They were pulled over in a motel parking lot in Wildersfield, Tennessee, around 80 miles west of Nashville. Inside the trunk with Carruth were $3,900 in cash, bottles of Gatorade, a cell phone, candy bars, and a handheld video game, and a bottle used for urinating. The setup made clear that he wasn't just hiding, he was prepared for a long escape. When they finally brought Ray Carruth in, he was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, discharging a firearm into occupied property, using an instrument to destroy an unborn child. His trial began October 23rd in 2000 in North Carolina. During the trial, the prosecution alleged that Carruth orchestrated the murder to avoid child support and parental responsibility. The defense, Carruth's legal team, argued he did not intend for Adams to be killed and was only present at the scene out of fear for his own life. By January 16th of 2001, the trial had ended and a verdict came in. He was guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, shooting into an occupied vehicle, using an instrument with intent to destroy an unborn child. He was found not guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced January 22nd, 2001 to 18 to 24 years in prison. Rae Carruth was released from prison on October 22nd, 2018 after serving nearly 19 years. Now, as far as the other two co-conspirators in this case, Michael Kennedy and Van Watkins. Van Watkins, the hitman, admitted to firing the shots that struck Sherika. He pled guilty to second-degree murder, receiving 40 years in prison. Watkins never expressed remorse, stating in court that he would have killed Carruth if he had the chance. He died in prison of natural causes in 2023. Michael Kennedy drove the vehicle for which Watkins fired the shots. He later told investigators that Carruth paid him to buy the murder weapon. He pled guilty to second-degree murder and spent nearly 11 years in prison. He was released in 2018. Now, before we end this case, I want to tell you about Sandra Adams and where she is now, what she's up to, and how Chancellor Adams is doing. Sandra has been the primary caregiver for her grandson, Chancellor Adams, since his birth. She has spoken publicly about her faith and the role it plays in giving her strength and patience in this journey. She's actively involved in speaking engagement. One article notes she visits prisons and discusses forgiveness with incarcerated individuals. When one of the men responsible for her daughter's death, Van Brett Watkins, died in prison, Sandra addressed it publicly. She said she forgave him and that his death gave no closure because it didn't bring Sherika back. She has emphasized ensuring Chancellor knows his mother's story, knows that he was born of love, and knows that he is loved unconditionally. Her willingness to consider a supervised visit between Chancellor and his father has changed over time. Initially, she wasn't open to it, but now she says she is, but with caution and emotional boundaries. She has turned her grief into advocacy, helping others who have lost children to murder and working with support groups like Mothers of Murdered Offspring. Sandra appears to be in a place of resilience and purpose, continuing to raise and support her grandson, honoring her daughter's memory, and using her experience to help others. She keeps a relatively low-profile life in Charlotte with travel, church, and therapy for Chancellor, as mentioned in interviews. Chancellor, 25. He graduated from high school in 2021. And according to his grandmother, Sandra, he has done things doctors never expected for him to do. For example, he is walking and he speaks in short sentences. This is the story of Cherica Adams. Takeaway. The story of Cherica Adams is not just a headline from the 90s that has been told several times. It's not even the story of Rae Carruth, a star football player who led his life into evil and debauchery. However, it's a reminder of something we still don't say loud enough. Black women are most at risk of being killed when they are pregnant. Reproductive coercion is violence. Control is violence. Being told to erase a child is violence. And when a woman refuses to disappear, some men would rather destroy her than let her live beyond their reach. Sherika didn't just refuse. She showed up. She lived her truth. And even in death, she chose life for her son. We are here today because she dialed 911, because she wrote a note when she couldn't speak, because she held on long enough for her baby to be born, because she did not let the man who abandoned her also silence her. So today we say her name. We say it so her son can hear it. We say it so her mother's grief is witnessed, not forgotten. We say it so stories like hers don't get buried under famous men's legacies. Say her name, Cherica Adams. May she be remembered not by the way she died, but by the life she fought to give. Let me know what you think about this very popular case in the comments. I'm sure you more than likely have heard it before, but by chance, if you never have, let me know what you think. I look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, friends, this is Murder in the Black.